So here's Jenna Piche.
Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Wait a minute. That's not right. In fact, what I hear more often is time is scarce. There's too much to do, too little time. Or my go-to was, if I could just pause the world and work for 7 days straight, then I'd feel caught up. Maybe you know this feeling. You work all day, you look up at 4 p.m., and you realize that thing you wrote on the top of the to-do list that was so important at the beginning of the day is still sitting there, untouched. And you say to yourself, gosh, I know I was busy all day, but what did I do? How am I still so behind? Well, you're not alone. And I have the evidence to prove it. Now, I'm a data geek, so I wondered, what do the high performers, the most productive of us, actually do differently? So I asked 750 working professionals. Do you want to know how many of them ended the day feeling productive, like time was actually on their side? Let me show you. Can you all stand up for me, please? All right. So I was talking with Pat Miller earlier today. Pat, you seem like a productive guy. You can have a seat. So with about 50 of us left in this room, look around. 98%. That's how many of us end the day feeling busy, but not productive. Thank you. You can have a seat. 98% across roles, industries, no matter the level of seniority, we're all ending the day feeling like we're coming up short. And we tell ourselves it's a character flaw, right? I just need better willpower. I just need better discipline. Or maybe there's something wrong with me. There's not. And that's what the research showed me. Now, I want to share with you today that you are not alone and you are not broken. But just because this problem is so widespread doesn't mean we can't have a huge impact on it. So today I want to share with you the two most foundational root causes for why we feel so perpetually busy. The first is our environment. Our workplaces are broken. We juggle something like 9 different modes of communication that we're expected to monitor and respond to instantly, not to mention the 275 interruptions we get every day, according to Microsoft. Guys, that's once every 2.5 minutes. Can you just imagine that for me? You sit down to do something extremely important, and 2 minutes in, your phone buzzes, or Slack goes off. Or my favorite, you get that reminder that you've got a meeting in 10 minutes, because who's going to get anything done in those 10 minutes then, right? Well, then you go to that meeting, and like most leaders, you are in back-to-back meetings taking up over half of your week. So in that environment, when you are looking at a to-do list of over 60 tasks, what do most of us do? Do we tackle the deep work, the stuff that takes real concentration? Or do we try to see how many of those easy, simple, quick things we can check off the list? What do you think? Tell me, deep or easy?
Easy.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that interesting? And it turns out our brains are wired to do this. And that is root cause number 2. Neuroscience tells us that our brains are constantly scanning for threats in an effort to keep us safe. Great survival mechanism hasn't evolved much over the centuries. Now it can't tell the difference between real danger and something that just makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable. So when we look at our to-do list with that big, complex task as the next thing, our brain does what it's designed to do. It helps us escape. answer emails, tackle Slack, the super simple, easy stuff that feels good to get done. But that deep work, that's the stuff that pushes us, that stretches us. That's the stuff that builds careers, innovates, and even creates movements. So what do the high performers among us do differently, even in this always-on environment, even with our brains working against us? They start. Not when they have 2 uninterrupted hours, not when they have the perfect environment, not even when they're ready, even when they only have 10 minutes. They start, because starting is the hardest part. Now, I'm no chemist, but I do remember from high school something called activation energy. So every reaction requires energy to get started. But once it's going, it can sustain itself. And the same is true for our work, right? The starting takes the most effort, but once we're going, it gets easier. Now, because our brains realize that the starting is the hardest part, it inflates the task. You know this if you start to hear that self-talk, like, oh, that's going to take forever. I think I need 2 hours to do that thing. I don't have capacity, so I better wait until later, right? I did this once with my board report. I knew the board was coming to town. The meeting was on the calendar for months, yet I sat on it. Every day, I would move it over from yesterday's to-do list, and I don't know why I couldn't get myself to start. I knew what I had to do, but I had this low hum of dread. I think that came from because I wanted to do a good job. Have you ever carried around a task with you in the back of your head everywhere you go? I carried this with me to meetings. I took it to dinner. I thought about it before I went to bed. My family would ask me a question and I'd have to say, what did you say? Because I was too busy thinking about it, right? Now, because nothing motivates action like an impending deadline, the morning it was due, I chained myself to my laptop at 5 a.m. with a bucket of tea, determined to grind it out. Guess how long it took me when I actually sat down to do it? 40 minutes. 40 minutes. The thing that I had carried around for so long, the dread, was so much worse than the task itself. And I had let it follow me for weeks. So how do we overcome what feels like such a huge lift to get started? Well, we lower the bar. And it just takes 2 minutes. Now I can hear some of you saying, lower the bar. 2 minutes. That's kind of insulting, isn't it? Especially for the kind of complex work that I've been avoiding, right? I thought so too. But then I saw it work over and over again. For execs, for leaders, for entrepreneurs, the people who had tried every productivity system under the sun, 2 minutes changed something for them that nothing else could. I call it the 2-minute start ritual, and this is how it works. First, you're going to pick a super simple, tiny task. It's not start the board report. It's open the document and write the first sentence. It's not do the whole client presentation. It's make a copy of last year's and change the title slide, right? Make this first step so easy you could trip over it. Then, I want you to set a timer for 2 minutes. Tell yourself, I only have to do this for 2 minutes. I can do anything for 2 minutes. And then you start. You do the tiny thing. And when the timer goes off, if you want to stop, that's okay. Give yourself that permission. But 9 times out of 10, what happens? You keep going, right? Because the starting was the hardest part. And now that you've started, you're through that. This works because momentum beats perfect action every single time. Once we get started, our brains shift from avoidance to engagement. We calm down a little bit. And then we start building some confidence. We realize that thing that felt so difficult maybe isn't as bad as I thought it was. Right? It doesn't look like some undefined looming threat, but instead you start to engage with it and you understand it might be easy. Our brains also, in this moment, probably without you even ever realizing, create something researchers call a ready-to-resume state. What does that mean? It means anytime you start something, your brain is automatically making a plan for where it's going to pick it up next time. So this is so helpful because even if you have to set it down, it already feels smaller and easier to come back to. Let me tell you about Rachel. Rachel was a senior director at a company, the kind of exec that was exceptional at her job and perpetually behind on the things that would have made her even better at it. When we started working together last year, we discussed creating a department big 3 priorities and one for each of the roles on her team. This so they could understand what actually deserved their time and attention. She said, "Sounds great, let's do it." She wrote it on her to-do list for Monday, had the best of intentions to get it done, and then the week happened. She got to Friday, she shut the laptop with shame, thinking, I don't know where the week went, but that's all right, I got next week. Monday, she wrote it on the list again, and the same thing happened. Same shame on Friday, closed the laptop, wrote it again on Monday. I see some shaking heads, like maybe this has happened to you before. 6 weeks she did this. 6 weeks of carrying this task around. It's the first thing she thought of when she got to work. It was the last thing she thought about before she went to bed. It was in the back of her brain in every meeting. So I gave her an assignment. 2 minutes. Just open a document and write down everyone on the team's name. Now that felt doable. She texted me the next day and said she started for 2 minutes and then continued for 20. She got through half the team. She picked it up the next day, spent another 10, and finally finished that project. 6 weeks of dread, 30 minutes worth of work. The thing that was most important to Rachel wasn't just that she completed the project, although that was great. She said that the anxiety lifted. That pressure that had been following her around, she was finally able to set it down because she got started. Every day we avoid the hard work costs us. Not just in missed deadlines or delayed projects, but in the mental capacity it takes up, in the emotional weight we carry, in the stress it has on our bodies, in our presence, the times we are physically somewhere else, but mentally still at the office. Because the important work doesn't disappear when we close our laptops. It follows us around like this looming long shadow. Now here's the important thing I want you to know about the professionals in my research who broke this pattern. They didn't create more time. They made one choice: to start before they were ready. To take 2 minutes before they could create another excuse. Now you all have that same option, that same choice you can make today. So I invite you to think about, what's the one thing that's been sitting on your list? The one thing you've kept waiting. Maybe it's something that's been there so long that it feels bigger and more dreadful than it actually is. Now, I want you to choose something specific, right? Not a general intention. It should be the proposal, the conversation, the presentation, the thing that was on your brain last weekend. You know what it is. When you leave this room today, I challenge you to give it 2 minutes, not because you'll finish, but because starting is the hardest part. And that anxiety that's been following you around, it'll lift as soon as you start. This ritual of starting is one of 5 of the interlocking habits that emerged from my research, something I call the CRAFT framework. Now, this isn't another productivity hack. It's an operating system. It's what the productive of us do differently to get real work done during business hours in the same chaotic environment where we have calendar chaos and interruptions like the rest of us. And here's what I know about folks who tend to be in rooms like this one. You're not just looking at this, thinking about your own to-do list. You're thinking about the people you serve, the teams and environments, or the teams and people that you invest in. And you're asking, what's an idea that's going to shift something for them? Not just inspire them for an afternoon, but truly shift something. Helping your people get more meaningful work done during business hours so they can actually shut it off and enjoy their lives, that makes a difference. So with that, friends, let's go start something.